Well, hello there. How are you all doing? Welcome to Reese Rambles. Let me just check my notes. Number 38. Yes. And I've had an incredibly busy day today. I woke up this morning and had to do an emergency server migration for our biggest e-commerce customer. It started having some hardware issues on one of their servers, and it's one of those times when outsourcing the hosting stuff to another company has been worth its weight in gold. I used to do all my own server management, and yeah, it makes you feel big and clever that you can go in there and Linux command line. But you know what? I don't miss the 3 a.m. stuff and fixing stuff. Just outsource that. I mean, it's quite stressful and it's still a lot of work having to sort of communicate with them and coordinate stuff and then test everything once the migration's done and kind of deal with the integration issues and software issues that kind of happen as a result of internal IP address changes and that kind of stuff. But it's been a hell of a lot less stressful than it would have been in the past. So yeah, that all went quite smoothly, but it was just obviously quite mentally taxing having that website down, being knowing how much money they kind of lose by the minute when they're not trading. But they were really happy with that, and just had a couple of sort of minor niggles to straighten out after that. And then had another e-commerce customer who are desperately trying to set up some Black Friday deals, which they didn't tell me were urgent, and they didn't tell me that their one and only marketing person was going to be off from today. And we'll be off over Black Friday. Basically, they're off for like the next 3 weeks. So that's on the 24th of November, I think. So in like 3 weeks' time. And so I had to get all of that set up for them in a mad rush, all of their Black Friday offers, which hopefully they'll work. Obviously, I'll have to keep an eye on that at the time because, like I say, their one and only marketing person is off for that, one of the busiest weekends of the year. Can't be helped. I have to say it's for health reasons. So that's fair enough. I don't mind picking that one up. But and yeah, another thing that came through our door a couple of days ago, software development project for a big sort of household name business. And they want it by Monday, and it's currently Friday. And we were told about this project earlier in the week, but we weren't actually sent any of the spec or anything until yesterday afternoon. But my wonderful employee Tom has handled that. I can't really take much credit for that, other than kind of fending off the customer and making sure the communication stuff happened. Getting the test server set up for that and getting stuff set up on there so they can actually look at it as development's ongoing. And yeah, that all worked out okay in the end. And I've just been out and I've also cleaned out the ducks just before it got dark, because it's now Friday afternoon, and also put the tortoise to bed for the winter. Quite a funny story about Cynthia the tortoise. A few weeks ago, my wife and I decided that Cynthia was starting to hibernate because she'd kind of started to bury herself. So we have a box in the garage that's got, hay and stuff in it that came from her previous owner. She's an adopted tortoise. We've only recently had her in the past few years. And so we put her in a box and didn't really think much more of it. And then for some reason, my wife was in there getting something out of the freezer. Decided to check up on Cynthia the tortoise, and Cynthia was in there peering back out, waving her little legs around, desperately trying to climb back out, because evidently we'd put her to bed too early and it wasn't cold enough to actually hibernate, so she had to go back out into the garden for another couple of weeks. Hopefully her week trapped in a box, buried alive, hasn't taken too much of a mental toll on her. She seemed all right, and she's been sort of pottering around a bit since then, but today she was well and truly buried and well and truly dozing off, so decided to try her in the box again. And I don't think the temperature's due to warm up again now. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it's all sorted this time. And one final thing about myself, about personal stuff, and about this week's Ramble specifically. My plan for this week, and the reason I'm kind of complaining about being so busy and stuff, and I get it. I don't have a real job. I have no right to complain. Going out for a nice dinner tonight and going to have some wine, and it's going to be awesome. So whatever. But obviously the reason for all the excuses and stuff is that I was going to do a second Ramble this week. Because the This Week in Retro guys are off, and I know there's a big crossover between our kind of viewership and listenership, and I thought, it'd be cool to, obviously. In the past, I have previously tried kind of covering the latest retro happenings and news and that kind of stuff. And I kind of moved away from that because there are other podcasts and YouTube channels and stuff, This Week in Retro included, who just do a much better job of that. And I thought I was just duplicating effort and just, people were more interested in kind of the behind the scenes stuff to do with me and with my channel and all the other crap that I go on about. So this week was going to be a one-off. I was going to do a second ramble all about retro news, but I only found one story for that and ran out of time to research it this week. And maybe I'll talk about it a bit later, but I've got so much other stuff to cover, but that seems unlikely. So I guess now's the time for the transition, and we will go into the first big piece of news for this week for my channel. So here we are, and oh no, I've left my estimated revenue visible so people can see the fortune that I'm making from ad revenue. So in a little bit, I'm going to talk about my my most popular video in quite a while, which went out about a week ago. And for my troubles, for those 40,000 odd views, plus all the views from all the other videos on my channel and the most recent one that went out a couple of days ago, YouTube has gifted me with £138.56 in ad revenue. Certainly not to be sniffed at. Don't get me wrong. It's a decent amount of money, but just goes to show if I were looking to make a full-time living doing this, I think I'd need an order of magnitude more views just to kind of be able to pay the mortgage and pay the bills. So there we go. I think that's still quite a while off. But anyway, that's not the big news for this week, of course. The big news is the other thing that you can hopefully see visible on this screen if you are watching. If not, if you're an audio listener, then I will point out that 25,000 subscribers. Thank you ever so much to all of my viewers, and particularly the people that tune into the rambles as well every week, because I think you're kind of my most dedicated audience and some of my biggest supporters. So thanks for sticking around and for putting up with all of my nonsense on Control-Alt-Reese. And I must say that it feels like a bit of a hollow victory, really, because I think basically, when the solar videos went out, the first solar video went out, I had around 7,000 subscribers, and that went up quite rapidly to about 20,000. And then that was around when I deleted or unlisted those videos. And that 5,000 has taken me about a year. Now, I know there's a lot of smaller channels out there who would absolutely kill for 5,000 subscribers in a year. Please don't get me wrong. It's amazing how quickly it's grown, and I am very, very grateful for it. But of course, a big chunk of those subscribers aren't really interested in my actual content because they subscribed thinking that this was some kind of solar channel, and I haven't made any of those kind of videos since, and I've even taken the ones down that were up. So it's actually created a bit of an issue where I release videos and a big chunk of those people don't actually watch them because they're not interested in the stuff that I have to offer. And I do quite often find actually that have people unsubscribing when videos first go out, and then it kind of evens out over time. But still a real milestone, particularly as it's the 4th anniversary of the channel. Started back in November 2019. I can't remember. I think it's actually in a week or so, like the anniversary of my first sort of proper video being uploaded. In fact, I can actually check that. Let's check that. So there are a couple of videos that I uploaded which were just intended to be embedded on my website, and I wasn't in them and didn't have any kind of voiceover or anything. I just uploaded them because I needed to upload them somewhere. And the very first video that I did was the Jason Bradbury Atari 2600 composite mod tutorial, and that went out on the 15th of November 2019. So maybe I'll talk a little bit more about the anniversary next week, or maybe the week after, when that's a bit more pertinent to things. But and it's interesting that it is relevant to something I want to talk about this week. So I released a video this week all about the Atari 2600. Again, I've done a few of these mods over the years, and they're always quite popular. But this one really took me by surprise because this one went out on the 26th of October, and it's since had 43,626 views. Which is kind of insane. 40,000 views on one of my videos. It's similar. In fact, it's actually more than I got on the interview with Clint from LGR, which was my previous kind of best performing, fastest growing video, if we ignore the solar stuff. And yeah, it just seems to have gone down really well. Obviously had all the usual issues with that being pushed out to a wider audience. You get the inevitable comments from idiots and stuff. Apparently, I've gained an extra 351 subscribers as a direct result of that. And it got 14 times more views than a typical video on my channel, which is absolutely fantastic. And if I look at the reach, it was actually pushed out to nearly 600,000 people have had that video pop up on their homepage. And I have to say, all the credit has to go to Lee from More Fun Making It. And I know I bang on about Lee all the time because he's just a genuinely lovely bloke. But the thumbnail with the upside down chip and the rather cryptic clickbaity title was actually his idea. When this first went out, it had a very boring thumbnail, which was just a picture of the two Ataris on a desk. And the title was something like "I fixed some Atari 2600s for a museum" or something, which is very boring. And after a day or so, the video was doing all right. It was doing sort of fairly typically. He said, "Oh, you should have made the chip thing the focus because it's really weird." And I was like, "Yeah, let's give that a try and see what happens." And here we are. Just over a week later, and we've got 40 plus thousand views. So that's fantastic. A lot of people had, as I mentioned, I had some weird feedback on that. I'm not going to. My original concept for this ramble was I was going to sit here and go through the comments and stuff, but I can't be doing with reading negative comments, whatever. But a lot of people kind of missed the point on this video. A lot of people saying, well, if they're going in a museum, then you want to keep them as original as possible, so people can experience them as they were back in the day. Some people complaining, I installed a UAV mod, the Ultimate Atari Video mod from the Brewing Academy. Big fan of those. Bought a big box of them a while back, and I installed them in everything because they're fantastic. And they had composite and S-video output to those consoles, various Atari consoles. And then I drilled some holes in the consoles. I wanted to add actual ports, actual physical connectors, so they could use cables that they could plug in and unplug in the museum. And usually when I do these, I'll have like a sort of permanently attached cable hanging out the back of the console, coming out of the original sort of hole that the RF cable originally came out of. And I kind of thought, well, they're using various different monitors and TVs, modern TVs that can't tune into the weak RF signal of these older things. And what if the cable gets damaged? What if some kid wrenches the S-video connector up, twists it and bends all the pins and rips them out, or crushes one of the plugs, or, then the whole console is going to have to be stripped down again and a new cable is going to have to be installed. And I thought, well, just have them so they plug into the back, and then the worst that can happen is if the cable gets damaged, just swap it for a new cable. If anyone grabs it and yanks on it, it's just going to pull the plug out of the back. And it's just better for something that's going to be sort of manhandled day in, day out, I think. So, a lot of people in the comments kind of missing the point of that, but hey, that's internet comments for you. And there's no one sort of correct way to do things, and I do take feedback on board. But so that was a very popular video. It took me completely by surprise. It was kind of a bit of a filler video, that one. So the backstory behind that is that I actually started editing it on the plane on our flight to America. Back in September. And I was going to actually edit it while we were away on holiday and kind of release it while we were away. Just didn't get around to it because I was having, an amazing time in America and couldn't be bothered. And then obviously when I got back, I started on the kind of the new office studio build and all that kind of stuff. And kind of fell by the wayside. And then because I wasn't, because I was working on the office studio and didn't have a kind of project on the go that I could make a video about. And I had this one that was sort of started and all recorded and partly sort of started, the editing process. I thought, well, I'll finish that and put it out. And, just a bit of filler for the channel. And there we go. It's the videos that you don't put too much thought into. Obviously, I put a lot of work and a lot of thought and a lot of effort into all of my videos. But you know what I mean? It's kind of the ones that you just put out there and the ones that you don't really expect to do well that tend to do really well. And it's gained me a load of subscribers and had all those views. So guess it must have been worth doing. And the ad revenue has just about covered the cost of the Ultimate Atari Video mods and the new power supplies that I bought for those. and all of the it probably hasn't actually covered the cost because of the cables as well. And then I've got to post them up to the Northwest Computer Museum. But whatever, it's for a museum. It's for educational purposes. So I don't mind dipping into my pocket and paying for stuff like that, and having the costs kind of partly covered by the ad revenue is certainly very welcome. And the next video that I released this week, which I was really, really proud of, and of course didn't do nearly as well. In fact, it's had about a 10th of the views. In fact, it's had about a 20th of the views, just looking at it now, was, of course, the Vintage Computer Exhibition, which is what I've been building in my new office studio space. And, quite funny, this one, because and it essentially started as me putting some racking up in the windows because I wanted a bit of privacy and I didn't want people sort of gawking in at me, recording videos and working on stuff in there. And then this whole concept of a computer exhibition kind of developed from there quite organically. And I've had a visit from the landlord. He loves it. He thinks it's fantastic. He's worked in IT his whole life. Told me some quite interesting stories, which I'm going to cover in the next video, because he actually has a personal connection to some of the stuff that I have in that studio space, which is really cool. And it just looks really cool, all lit up at night. Recorded my first proper video there. Of course, it's not the final setup. I still need to do some more work on the actual studio space and on the lighting setup and the sort of shelving and the workbench area in particular. And also the lights in there seem to flicker at a really weird frequency, and my camera doesn't like it. So I had to run like a deflicker filter on all of the stuff that I did to camera within the actual studio, and that made the rendering time last like 4 times as long as well. So it took like 40 minutes to render the video as well. But whatever, the trials and tribulations of a retro YouTuber, I guess. And the display itself came out looking really, really nice. And, I've got a few sort of small tweaks in mind that I want to do to that. But the main focus will be sort of internally in the actual studio space itself. So another really big piece of personal news for me this week. And I didn't know whether to lead with this or... of course, I ended up leading with the 25,000 subscriber news and the 4th anniversary of the channel and the 40,000 view video that I had, which is all completely crazy. But another really big piece of personal news for this week, and hopefully you can see why I wanted to kind of spin out the retro news concept into a separate ramble. But it all started just before we went to America. So this was back in September. And it was a few days before we were due to depart, and I had a message from someone, and it's someone whose work I'm very familiar with, someone in the industry, someone I have a lot of respect for, and I think they do fantastic work. I've kind of used them as sources for stuff that I've done before, and basically just sent me this message out of the blue saying, "Would you like to write a chapter for a book about console history?" And of course, I was very interested. I love writing, The research and the writing side of this is probably my favourite aspect of it. I mean, there's not really an aspect of making videos and stuff that I don't like, but certainly the kind of the learning and the documenting and kind of researching the information and fact checking and going into all like the historical documents and stuff is that's very much my bag, and I'm very much very much enjoy that side of things. So to get an opportunity to do that on a console that I hadn't covered yet on the channel, I thought, this sounds fantastic. So, replied saying, sounds great. What are the details? And unfortunately, because of the deadlines and stuff that they had in mind for the book, essentially I would have been on holiday for kind of most of it. And I didn't want to spend, I'd kind of already had this idea of making videos while I was on holiday. And I didn't want to commit to writing a book while I was away as well, because I was with my wife and some friends of ours. And, to spend the whole time doing this rather than enjoying being in America. I thought, unfortunately, it's an opportunity that I'm just going to have to turn down. So I replied and I said, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to be away for, until such and such a date. I'm going to have to say no on this occasion, unfortunately. And they replied saying, well, actually, we can be flexible on the deadline if that helps. And so I replied saying, okay, in that case, I'd be interested. And that was the last I heard from them. And of course, I went away on my holiday and I came back and had a lot of work to catch up on, a load of YouTube stuff to catch up on. I had my new studio stuff that all happened. And in the back of my mind, I was waiting for some more confirmation, like a new deadline or some more information on what it was they actually wanted or what the project was. And then I had another message completely out of the blue saying, "Hey, how are you getting on with this?" And I must admit, I'd actually done a bit of research into the subject because it kind of piqued my curiosity. It was the Atari 7800, in case you're interested. It's no big secret. And it's a console that, of course, I'm familiar with, released in 1986 under the Trammell's Atari era, which is an era of Atari that I do know a fair bit about anyway. And but I hadn't actually sort of sat down and put pen to paper, so to speak, and actually started writing this chapter for this book. And it was like 2,000 plus words. And I was entirely honest with him. And I said, "Look, I'm really sorry. I think I got the wrong end of the stick, but I was kind of waiting on you for some more information. And I didn't realise this was actually going to go ahead." And looking back at the wording of the messages and stuff, we were both very apologetic and were like, "Oh yeah, perhaps we should have been a bit clearer and should have clarified what we actually wanted." But it was all cool, worked out in the end, and he actually happened to catch me at a time when I was relatively quiet with work and relatively quiet with videos, and I was like, "Yeah, I can get it done. It's no problem at all. I've got plenty of notes and stuff, and I really enjoy this kind of thing." And spent kind of every waking moment, researching this and making notes and kind of whipping it up into a book chapter. Got it sent off, and he spent some time sort of proofreading it and said, "Yeah, this is absolutely fantastic. It's ideal. Thanks for all your hard work." And I actually got paid for that as well. It's actually a paid writing job, I don't mind saying. So really, really pleased with that. I didn't really do it for the money. It's just something that I've really enjoyed kind of learning about. And of course, I will use that research and everything to kind of make a video on the Atari 7800 as well in the future. But I suppose I should tell you what the book is, because it's no big secret and it has officially been announced now. So it's a collaboration between Lost in Cult, who do really, really nice, high quality books about the history of sort of gaming and that kind of stuff. Really, really nice. Nice. I've used the word nice twice now to describe their work, but it's high end, hardback. I don't want to say coffee table book, because that kind of, I think that kind of cheapens what they do a bit. But a lot of really good sort of journalism and research goes into these books, and they're really quite comprehensive, and they're really absolutely beautifully designed as well. Some fantastic artwork in these. And I had no idea that I was actually contributing to one of these books until after I'd submitted the the chapter. I mean, I know about one party's involvement, but not the other. So it's called The Console Chronicles, and it has over 400 pages. This thing's going to be an absolute tome of console history, covering basically the entire history of console gaming. And it will include my little chapter about the Atari 7800. So there is an official trailer, and it's only very short. So I think I'm going to include it here. So this is the trailer.
The Console Chronicles.
Yes! Lost in Cult and Hookshot are teaming up to celebrate the legacy of console gaming, from the Magnavox Odyssey all the way to the modern machines.
Using archival imagery, top-notch illustrations, and words from some of the sharpest minds in the gaming industry, I say so myself. The Console Chronicles brings over 50 years of gaming to life from the people who flippin' experienced it.
In the most comprehensive book about the history of consoles ever made.
Probably.
We'll guide you through every generation of home console hardware and the games that defined them.
From 1-bit Pong to the birth of Atari, the battle of Nintendo and Sega, and Mario and Sonic, the rise of PlayStation, and the Green Machine, Xbox.
The Console Chronicles is the quintessential history of all your favourite systems, be you a hobbyist, a collector, a Nintendo stan, a Sony pony, whatever your bag, we've got it, baby!
This book covers everything.
As well as the big hitters, we cover the experiments and passion projects throughout history.
Magnavox Odyssey, Intellivision, Commodore 64, Jaguar, Saturn, you name it.
All presented with Lost in Cult's signature style and design principles.
Pre-orders are going to be available pretty flipping soon, like now.
Don't miss out. Pre-order today.
So yeah, a pretty big deal with some pretty big names associated, and little old me and my chapter on the Atari 7800. And the Atari 7800 is a really fascinating console. I don't want to spoil the chapter, before the book comes out, but while it's all fresh in my mind, it was developed by an outside company called GCC and General Computer Corporation. And they got their start. They were basically a bunch of MIT dropouts, and they got their start making modifications for arcade machines. And they actually invented Ms. Pac-Man. Oddly enough, they made an enhancement for the original Pac-Man arcade game called Crazy Otto, where they basically added a load of extra levels and increased the difficulty and changed the enemy behavior and stuff. And Midway saw it, and they really liked it, and they actually bought the rights from GCC and repackaged it and sold it as Ms. Pac-Man as an official sequel. And perhaps more relevant to the Atari side of the story is that they made a modification for Missile Command called Super Missile Attack. And obviously Missile Command, you've got like the bases along the bottom that you've got to defend. And they added like extra enemies that come in from the top, and they put 6 bases rather than 3. And they were selling this enhancement board to arcade operators, and it was actually doing quite well, quite popular. And Atari got wind of it, and they thought, well, we're losing revenue here. That people are extending the life of their Missile Command arcade cabs rather than buying new games from us. And this company are using our trademarks and stuff in their advertising. They're mentioning Atari and Missile Command and stuff in the actual adverts in kind of the arcade sort of trade press where they're advertising these things. And Atari actually tried to sue them. And there was this long-winded lawsuit, and the guy that I forget the guy's name. As usual, I've not got notes. A bit of a running theme here, but essentially the owner of GCC basically ran rings around them in court, and there were very minor technicalities and things that allowed them to kind of carry on selling this mod board. Atari threw loads and loads of money at it. The whole lawsuit basically fell apart, and it was going nowhere. And basically, Atari decided to do what Midway would eventually do, and actually hire them and get them to do some development work for them as a contractor. And actually, it was a massively successful partnership. They came out with new arcade games. They came out with games for the 2600. They did some ports for the 2600. And they did a load of work on the 5200, and also developed the actual 7800 console and a whole new graphics chip. And which was... It was a really sort of powerful graphics chip at the time, and was going to be very revolutionary. And then ended up sat on the shelves for over 2 years, by which point the NES and the Master System had completely taken over the whole 8-bit console market, and Atari could barely get a look in. And the whole reason for that is the Trammels, who basically at the time were in the process of acquiring Atari. The previous owners, Warner, had a load of these consoles manufactured, all ready to go, all boxed up, packaged up, had all the marketing and stuff ready to go. Put them all in a warehouse, ready for distribution. And the Trammels took over and said, no, we're going to put all of this on hold, and we're going to investigate the commercial viability of it before we release anything. That took them 2 years. It took them a whole year to pay GCC for all of their work, which of course was a whole massive issue in itself. And eventually the 7800 was released into a very different world to the one in which it was conceived. It could have been a completely different story for Atari had they released it back in 1984 as originally planned, which is kind of a bit of a recurring theme for that era of Atari. But so the book, my chapter, goes into that in great detail, talking about all the sort of historical context around that, and also the kind of the technical aspect of how that console was developed as well. So it's going to be a really interesting read, and of course something I'd quite like to do a video on my channel about one day as well. So that's pretty much all I have for you in this week's Ramble. I told you I had a lot of stuff to talk about, and that's before even getting started on the whole retro gaming thing that unfortunately I'm going to have to save for another time. But one more thing that I didn't happen to get a screenshot of at the time, and unfortunately has since been deleted, and I have absolutely no idea why, but I think there was some controversy about one of the other people that was involved. But hey, that's the internet for you. But Yeah, earlier this week I was recommended by Ian Lee, of all people, on Twitter. He basically tweeted saying, these are some great retro channels. Can you suggest any more for me? And he's got like over 100,000 followers on there. And basically there were four of us. There was like me, RMC, Slopes Game Room, and Pat the Nespunk, I think was the other one he recommended, which is a really odd selection. And I think maybe one of those ended up being a bit controversial, and I did see some discussion in the comments, and maybe that's why he deleted the tweet. But certainly wasn't anything to do with me, and I did respond thanking him and have a really nice reply from him as well. And it's a real shame I didn't screenshot any of it, because it would have been really cool to show you. But yeah, Ian Lee was really huge in kind of the 90s and kind of the turn of the century, around the 2000 era. TV presenter on Channel 4. He's been on BBC Radio. I think he presents a show on LBC Radio. And he's very recently also released a podcast. This guy's been podcasting for years. He was kind of one of the pioneers of podcasting, and has done all sorts of stuff over the years. But he recently released one called Ian Lee's Random Access Memories, which is a retro gaming podcast, and it's gone to like the top of the Apple Podcast chart as well. So it's been massively successful. He's an actual sort of real life bona fide celebrity. So for him to shout out my channel on Twitter was quite a big deal for me at the time, and it was like, yeah. So yeah, Ian, I don't know if you want to have me on as a guest or something or what. Quite happy to get on there and natter about all sorts of retro gaming stuff. Obviously, I've had some of my good YouTube compatriots on there, my good friends Retro Faith and Elliot Cole and those kind of people. So yeah, perhaps you could have me on to talk about Atari and stuff. But that would be very cool. But yeah, that is, as stated, all I have for you this week. A bit of a rushed ramble, I'm afraid, but so much big news to report that I couldn't miss a week. And now I've got to very hastily edit this together and get it uploaded and scheduled for release tonight. Because, like I say, I'm out for dinner tonight and rapidly running out of time. So thank you ever so much for listening, as always, and for watching. Hopefully next week's will be a bit more coherent. And just wanted to give a bit of a shout out to the This Week in Retro guys. Shame you've had to miss a week, but hopefully you guys will be back bigger and better than ever next time. So very, very cool. That's it. I got to go. Bye.